What's up, everybody? Thank you for joining me as always, and welcome back to day 4 of the Camp Crystal Lake tour. Now, not only am I excited to get into this entry because it is hands down one of the best in the entire franchise, but it also brings the conclusion of our tour. And you know, I've had a lot of fun reviewing this series, but I'm ready to move on to other projects and start seeing what else I can come up with for my channel. What's that? Well, no, it's just, I was telling them, you know, the final chapter. Well, yeah, no, because, you know, Jason dies. What? There are how many more movies? Released in 1984, Friday the 13th Part 4, the final chapter, picks up right where we left off, with Jason still in the barn and a fresh axe wound right in his head. Now, chronologically, after that 5-year gap we had between parts 1 and 2, Friday the 13th parts 2 through 4 take place in about 5 days, in which Jason kills 34 people. Yes, 34 people in 5 days. That's an impressive work week for anyone. If ever there's a man that deserved a weekend, it would be Jason Voorhees. Unfortunately, this movie takes a page right out of part 2 and gives us another damn recap. Now, I do think it's handled better than the recap we get in part 2, because this one, as opposed to just showing the entire final act of a previous entry, this kind of gives us like some of the highlights of the first 3 films. And it makes more sense in this entry, considering at the time, this was supposed to be the final Friday the 13th. Which is a big reason that Tom Savini returns for part 4, as he wanted to properly kill off the serial killer that he helped create. And let me just say, this movie wastes no time letting us know that Tom Savini is back with a vengeance. The first death in this movie comes from the coroner Axel, who has the creepiest line in this movie.
Real cute girl. Was. Well, she still is.
Followed by one of the funniest lines.
Jesus Christmas! Holy Jesus goddamn! Holy Jesus jumping Christmas shit!
But his character is short-lived, as Jason gives him a bone saw to the neck and gives him a half exorcist spinning his head around. This kill is brutal. Like, they really wanted to make a statement early that this movie's not messing around. And while I think this is genuinely one of the funnier entries in the series, the movie is also very violent. They definitely wanted to get away from like the campy tone that they set with part 3. This entry may be the best as far as quality. As if I had to put together a top 10 list of my favorite Jason kills, which I may do a future video on, I would be very hard pressed not to put 3 or 4 of them from this entry alone. You know, you get the iconic corkscrew kill.
Ted! Hey, Ted, where the hell's corkscrew?
Ted! Ted, where's the corkscrew? And I just love the commitment by Crispin Glover, like the way his whole body's flinching when he gets that cleaver to the face. And oh, the effects there are excellent. That's the Savini difference. You get the iconic, of course, Jason grabbing one of the twins through the window. Tina, I believe's her name. He just like pulls her through the window and throws her on the car. This is a kill they would replicate a few more times as the series goes on, but it is never better than in part 4 here. And they all happen so fast. Like after you get the corkscrew kill and then you get Tina being thrown out the window, you get Ted being stabbed through the projector. And I mean, you know, that's a pretty average kill, but the way the knife and the blood just kind of like slide down as his body's falling. That's excellent. And then right after that, we get Doug in the shower, you know, just kind of gets his head crushed up against the tile. Man, Jason is not fucking around in this movie. And then at the end, of course, you get Jason himself being killed. And man, there are just so many good kills in this movie that I could go on and on about. And there's even a few funny ones, which I don't know if they were meant to be ironically funny or not. But you have the raft with the... Now, while all these deaths are happening, I think we meet one of the smartest characters in the entire series, as Gordon the dog jumps out of the window and bails. Like, why don't more people do that? And it wouldn't be a Friday the 13th movie without a chase scene. And we get, I think, one of the best in the franchise here, as Trish is doing her best to keep Jason away from Tommy this entire time. And when they eventually make their way back to the cabin, after Trish gives Jason the permanent Vulcan salute, Tommy's able to utilize his effects skills when he shaves his head and tricks Jason into thinking that he's a younger version of Jason himself. Now, even though Trish kind of wastes this opportunity, as all she really does is not knock Jason's mask off and drop the machete, luckily she's able to distract him long enough so Tommy can pick it up and just drive it right in the side of Jason's head. And oh man, when he falls down on the machete and his head's just like kind of sliding down it, ooh, that's still hard to watch. But it's fantastic. And again, man, this Jarvis family is just really smart. You had Gordon the dog getting out of there, and then you have Tommy, who sees Jason's fingers move, and he's not messing around. This kid has to hit him at least like 15 times just to make sure he stays dead. Now overall, you guys can probably already tell my opinion on this movie. I absolutely love the final chapter. It's one of my favorite, if not my favorite, Friday the 13th. I would put it up there as probably one of my favorite top 10 horror movies of all time. And with that being said, I have a lot to say in terms of positives for this movie. The first thing I really love is we actually get some characters here. This is the first time in the franchise that I don't want to see every teenager just kind of like slaughtered. They actually have compelling storylines. They're believable as humans. They have the best chemistry of any group of teenagers I've seen in this entire franchise so far. And they all have their quirks that I love. Like, of course, you have Jimmy, the dancing prodigy. You have Ted, who, well, he kind of gives off some creepy vibes. He's still really fun to watch. You have Trish and Tommy here, two of the most iconic characters in the entire franchise, and one that would go on to be Jason's rival for a trilogy of movies. You have Gordon the dog, I mean, come on. And then you have Rob, and while Rob isn't exactly memorable, he still serves a good B storyline here as he's looking to avenge his sister's death. And that leads me right into my second positive for this movie, which is there's actually a few compelling storylines here. And while in one sense it is just a classic Friday, put a bunch of teenagers in the woods, let Jason kill them, you also get a little beneath the surface, as you have this character Rob Dyer looking to avenge his sister's death. And then you have, for the first time in an entry, it's not just a final girl. You have a final girl that's going through hell to save her little brother. The damage that Trish does on Jason and everything she goes through just to keep him away from Tommy is one of the reasons that I have to put Trish in the upper half of my final girls in this franchise. Positive number 3 will be, for the first time in this series, this movie nails the pacing. In my opinion, there is not a dull moment in this entire movie, whereas even when Jason's not on screen killing people, you still get storylines worth looking into, and you still get characters that are fun to watch on their own that can actually hold up the movie. My next positive is definitely the atmosphere and the tone. Now, while part 3 kind of threw that out the window, that had way too many scenes in the daytime that just didn't work for me, part 4 definitely brings back the scary atmosphere with the rain and the thunder just adding to it. And this movie even utilizes the environment and the effects to its advantage. Like, one of my favorite kills in this movie is where you just see the lightning strike and you see the silhouette of Jason just like stabbing the girl. That's an excellent example of an off-camera kill done right. Another thing future movies would try and usually fail at. Next, I have to give a ton of credit here to Ted White, which is Part 4's version of Jason. This guy took everything that Richard Brooker did right with Part 3, and he took it up another level. You know, Ted White is just, for my money, he's one of the most visceral and brutal and violent Jasons in the entire series. And when we're talking about Jason, that's what I like to see. I also love how this movie utilizes lighting and shadows to keep Jason in the dark for a large portion of the movie. Like whereas Part 3 just kind of had him running out in the middle of the day. And Richard Brooker was still excellent, you know, he was still terrifying. But Part 4 just takes it up another level by making Jason feel darker, and you feel the stalking nature of him more in Part 4. And finally, I've mentioned it a bunch of times already, but I have to give this movie major props for the creativeness of the kills and the brutality of the kills, along with the effects. Thank you, Tom Savini. This movie just goes so over the top with the gore that I love. It sets the tone early on with that kill of Axel where he twists his head. Man, I love that kill. And this movie just, it doesn't hold back. You get easily some of the most creative and violent kills in the entire franchise here in Part 4. And
God, I love that.
And also, this movie has some genuinely funny moments. I don't know if they were all necessarily on purpose, but this is a pretty funny movie. Now, I do have a few negatives here, but I really only have 3 bad things to say about this movie. The first may be a bit nitpicky, but I just don't think we needed another recap. Like I said, I understand why they did it, and it was better executed than Part 2. But I don't think we needed another recap. My second negative would be the character of Rob. I really wish he had a bigger moment. Like he had an entire B storyline where he was looking to avenge his sister. And when he runs into Jason, he gets honestly one of the worst deaths in the movie, albeit one of the funniest in the entire franchise as he narrates his own death. But yeah, he just doesn't really get that showdown with Jason that I was hoping for. And then my third and final gripe would be some of the dialogue here isn't great. A lot of times I feel like they were reading a script from another movie or were thrown in the middle of a conversation with no context. So yeah, I wasn't a huge fan of the writing and the dialogue. Now with all that being said, this is absolutely one of the best Friday the 13th movies in the entire franchise. Like if somebody didn't want to necessarily sit through 12 movies and they just said, hey, like what's one movie you'd recommend in the series so I can kind of get a feel for the tone? It would absolutely be Friday the 13th, the final chapter. Every horror fan that hasn't seen this movie should go watch it immediately. All right, everybody, that's going to do it for me. Tell me what you thought of Friday the 13th, Part 4. Do you find this movie to be overrated, or is it one of your absolute favorites? Let me know down here in the comments. If you like what I'm doing here, please be sure to give me a thumbs up and subscribe so you can get all my future content. And if you enjoyed this series of Friday the 13th reviews, be sure to check out a few more right over here. Until next time, we'll see you guys for Friday the 13th, Part 5, Roy Burns. A New Beginning.